Hi, this is Nancy Love, and I'm making a series of videos called Micropeace for the Planet Peace Project. The Micropeace studies involve wrapping up some ideas from psychology, behavioral medicine, and I'm not sure that recorded. I'll repeat myself. This is Nancy Love, and I'm talking about Micropeace studies that involve information from various disciplines, everything from spirituality to philosophical studies to behavioral medicine and psychology. I would like to discuss briefly some concerns I have about the side effects of typically used pharmaceuticals. I heard of a situation in which a woman had dental surgery, right? She had a tooth removed. And the dentist arbitrarily prescribed some sort of antibiotic. The woman started sleeping in the middle of the day and couldn't stay awake, and finally looked at the circular that came with the drug and noticed that one of the side effects potentially was extreme drowsiness. So she called her dentist and said, "Could this be happening to me?" Then the dentist said, "Well, maybe so. So let's switch it out." The woman was prescribed a second antibiotic, went on it immediately, and I'll point out of any sort. This was just a preemptive measure or prophylactic measure. And she immediately, within a day, started thinking she had all kinds of allergies. Was it a new cosmetic, a new shampoo? Did some pollen blow in from, on a strong wind? But she thought she had some really significant allergies because her eyes got really red and hurt, and they were very problematic all of a sudden. Here again, she got around to reading the side effects that came with the page about the side effects that came with the second antibiotic, and it said swollen red tearing eyes. So she calls her dentist and says, "Yo, lady, now my eyes hurt." And so the dentist prescribed the woman a third antibiotic, which the woman um, didn't go on immediately because she read the circular first this time, and it talked about Clostridium difficile or something. It talked about the possibility that this third antibiotic could wipe out all the healthy biome in your gut so badly that you could end up with a bad intestinal infection that could kill you. And so, since death was mentioned as a possible side effect for the third antibiotic, she called her dentist and said, "I'm not taking any of this stuff. Just, taking it back to the pharmacist or doing something with it, but I don't even have a dental infection, and I'm not taking any of these antibiotics." And the dentist said, "Oh, well, okay, not a problem. If you do get an inflammation in the area, let me know." Well, by the time all this had happened, the area that the tooth had been removed at was healed anyway. So the dentist kept prescribing and overprescribing antibiotics for someone who did not need them to begin with. And the side effects being or an animal should never go directly from one antibiotic to another within the same day. I forget the term, but there's some term. There's a cleansing period. So if you have a dog or a cat, a horse, a parrot, a ferret, a human being, you're not supposed to stop taking one type of antibiotic and very suddenly start taking a different one because it can affect the normal health. They're contraindicated because they can actually interact. There's some kind of crystallization that can occur. There's some kind of interactions that can occur. And the dentist didn't know this or didn't care. So it's just really bad. I've seen this happen with veterinarians as well. Actually, there's supposed to be at least one whole day of cleansing and rest for the body between uh, those types of things. I think that we all know we're all overprescribed anyway. And some of us rarely take pharmaceuticals of any sort because we know that there are a lot of natural means, healthy means of dealing with health issues. Most of us probably wouldn't have so many health issues if we didn't live in a highly stressful society with a lot of pollution and a food supply chain that has been doctored with a lot of hormones and antibiotics and pesticides. The food supply itself and the air pollution and the water pollution and the stress of our society and possibly even electronic um, pollution from Wi-Fi signals and cell phone signals. All of these factors are influencing the physical health of beings on this world. And if we lived more natural lives and had better food, less stress, and less pollution, most of us probably wouldn't be so sick to begin with. Now, depressants, antidepressants. In the 1980s, I read a 400-page book, this thick, that book was, of uh, small print that was just all the side effects of the various antidepressants that were used at that time. Surely there's been a lot of research done. Those pharmaceuticals have evolved, perhaps, and hopefully they're more healthy now. But at that time, every antidepressant that was being prescribed in the 1980s had a list of side effects that some of which were really devastating. Suicidal thoughts were noticed in people taking antidepressants, not because of the depression, but because the brain chemistry altered and a certain part of the brain became more active in people who took certain pharmaceuticals. Depression, I kid you not, depression was the single most commonly listed side effect for antidepressants. So how do you know? You have magnetic resonance imaging by literally looking at the electronic functioning of the brain, and also by doing lab tests, blood tests, and so forth. That initially an antidepressant will resolve the depression. The person will feel better, they'll be more functional, they'll be more active and get things done, and they'll be more productive, and then they'll have a slide, a tank as they become desensitized to the chemical. They'll have to up their dosage, and once they up their dosage one or more times, then they actually get side effects from the antidepressant, not the least of which is depression. Oh my God. Didn't any therapy, cognitive therapy, Albert Ellis therapy, Carl Rogerian therapy, talking through issues that made you depressed to begin with, can not only, over the course of a longer period of time, heal the brain chemistry anomalies, but help you deal with the issues that cause depression to begin with. So think on these things, my friends. Don't just pop whatever pill your doctor tells you to. Actually read the side effects, and your physician or physicians should be partners in your health, not the boss of your health. You are the boss of your own health. You are in charge. And when your physician or physicians prescribe medications for you that you uh, ought to be afraid of or have concerns over the side effects of, then you need to address that, and you need to be very firm that you're only going to do what is good for you. Um, we have something called the internet now, and if you need to, there are many excellent books in the reference section of something called libraries. If any of them are open in this pandemic, then you have a lot of sources of information that can be your adjunct in health and healing. Another very frequently mentioned side effect of antidepressants is weight gain. And the people who were doing the theorizing and all of this said that weight gain itself, being such a very frequent side effect of antidepressants, was in itself causing depression because people gain weight and get depressed over the fact that they're not as vibrant and healthy and vigorous as they were. So, when you've read a 400-page book about the side effects of just one type of pharmaceuticals, it pretty much sets you on a course of suspicion about pharmaceuticals in general. You absolutely have to read the side effects. Now, the reason that I got inspired to talk about this today is because I know several people, and I know of several people who are on something called Adderall. And Adderall is most frequently used as a drug for attention deficit disorder. It can also, I think, be used as a stimulant, possibly as an anti anxiety medication. But Adderall is a very, very, very dangerous thing. And just like so many other pharmaceuticals and black market drugs, too, for that matter, people use a little, their brain becomes desensitized to them. So they use more and more and more, and there's an escalating pattern of usage. And the more you use of something, the more difficult it is for your liver and your kidneys to excrete it. Often, substances can accumulate in your brain tissue and in other tissues, resulting in neurotoxicity, not only in the central nervous system, but in the peripheral nervous system as well. You can actually get nerve damage in your hands and feet from some of these drugs. You can get brain damage from some of these drugs. And last night, for the first time, I actually could be bothered to look up the side effects of Adderall. And I was very concerned because brain damage is one of them. It's extremely common for the usage, the dosage of people using it. They cause personality changes. They cause behavioral changes. It causes liver and kidney dysfunction. It causes intestinal dysfunction. And from what I can tell, from what I've heard uh, described, people who know people on Adderall, it's kind of like knowing a speed freak, or it's kind of like knowing someone who does a lot of cocaine. You really can't tell the difference. When people are on this very frequently, commonly prescribed pharmaceutical, which probably was designed with good intent, they act crazy. And when you consider the physiological testing that has been done on people who are addicted to Adderall, what you find is that it can cause lasting neurological damage, including damage to the brain. Now, there are ways to get off of it, and there are ways to heal from it. And I would suggest that anyone who's been using Adderall take a really good look at their lives, their personality, their behavior, their relationships, get some blood work done, possibly get a functional magnetic resonance imaging done of the brain to see if the stuff that you're using to become more focused and productive and efficient isn't killing you, or at the very least, damaging your brain and your behavior and your relationships instead of helping you. People, there was a natural world a long time ago, and a lot of us don't pay attention to the fact that only about 200 to 250 years ago, there was no pharmaceutical industry. Doctors might prescribe elderberry wine for fatigue, or might, you know, let's face it, salicylic acid, otherwise known as aspirin, was discovered by people who chewed on leaves that contained salicylic acid and they felt better. It cured headaches. So the entire pharmacopoeia of humankind came originally from plant sources. Then we decided it was easier and faster to synthesize some of these same chemicals in laboratories. We tormented and tortured millions upon millions of animals, trying to figure out better ways of getting things like salicylic acid or other types of naturally occurring substances. We pollute our land, we pollute our air, we pollute our water, we put pesticides all over everything. We inject, I personally am a vegan, I don't eat animal sourced food, but hormones and antibiotics are loaded into the animal food supply chain. And if you are eating the typical Western diet, you're messed up. So stop it, go organic, think vegan, and look very, very, very carefully at the pharmaceuticals that you're being prescribed. Because maybe somebody developed them with good intentions, or maybe somebody just wants to make a buck off of your pain. I will tell you one story and then I'll let you go. About a decade ago, a little bit more than a decade ago, I talked to someone who'd been a vice president, one of the vice presidents for a very world renowned pharmaceutical organization. And he was one of the people who went out into doctors' offices and told them, showed them samples for new drugs and so forth. Well, the president of that company, and believe me, you would know the name of this pharmaceutical corporation. It's like $1 billion a year uh, gross receipt organization. Called him in, and he said, "Look, I'm telling you to push cancer drug B instead of cancer drug A." Guy said, "Why?" Said, "Because we make a better profit off of cancer drug B, this new thing." And the vice president guy told the president, "But sir, cancer drug B is very well known as being significantly less effective for certain types of cancer, including breast cancer and other kinds of cancer. Cancer drug A that you're telling me we have a lower profit for is better at actually curing things like breast cancer. And I'm not going into doctors' offices and pushing cancer drug B when I know fully well that cancer drug A is the one their patients might actually need." President of a pharmaceutical company said, "Do you want your Christmas bonus or not?" He said, "Well, I know I want my Christmas bonus, so if you want to keep your job in this company, you're going to sell the drug I'm telling you to sell because that's the one we make more money from." And then he said, and I quote, I'm quoting the guy who was there in the office when this happened. He said, "To hell with whether this cures cancer or not. We don't want to cure cancer. We want to treat it." And then the president of a major international pharmaceutical company threw up his hands and said, "If we went around curing cancer, we wouldn't have any more customers." Well, the now former vice president of that company walked out the door and said something to the effect of, "Buddy, you can keep your Christmas bonus and you can put it," and I'm not going to say what he suggested, but that's why that guy's my friend. Believe me, if that man were the kind of person who said, "Okay, sure, I'll push whatever drug you want me to push because I want more money and to heck with people with cancer," then he would never have been my friend. He wouldn't have made the cut. But precisely and only because he was the sort of man with such integrity and such concern for you and your health and me and my health before we ever met, I call that man my friend. So think on these things. It's a big, mad world.